Welcome to Some Guy's Garage. Today we're taking a look at the DeWalt Atomic Series DCF513, which is a 3/8 inch ratchet. So typically you'd hear them called air ratchets, but this one's actually cordless and runs on the 20 volt system. These are pretty new out there. They just came out in the last year. I've been interested in trying one, so I finally have picked one up. And today we're going to check this one out as well as compare it to a couple of older air ratchets that I have. So I have the Aircat 802, which is a fairly new, really quiet air-powered ratchet. I also have this really old Husky brand one. This one came with the first compressor I ever bought as a kit, and it's extremely noisy, but we're gonna also compare it to that just as another reference point. To get started, we'll unbox and then check it out. All right, opening up here. It's wrapped in plastic. There's a little bit of cardboard here. So there's the air ratchet. I'm going to say that a few times in this video, but there's the ratchet. It's not air powered, but just natural habit. These are called air ratchets in my mind. But there's the ratchet itself. This one is just the bare tool, so it doesn't come with anything else but the typical DeWalt instruction manual. So we'll throw all this in the packaging in here and throw that to the side. And let's take a look at the tool here. Battery slides on the back here. I'm going to grab one of those. So here's battery. This is the 2 amp hour. These would probably work really well with the smaller power stacks, but I don't have any of those yet. But battery slides on the back there, and that's what it looks like with the battery on. I guess you would mostly sit it that way. You can tell they've designed the guard here so that it sits on that in the battery and not as much the head, so it's kind of tipping just on that point. On the bottom there's the trigger. Obviously this looks like a trigger lock, so when it's on the one position the trigger won't go unlocked. There is a light, so there's a light facing down through there to the head. And then the head itself, turn this around here, has the typical forward and reverse on the top. It's kind of interesting that there's a bit of a cutout so you can at least see which way to go. On most air ratchets, it does have a forward reverse, but there's no indicator which way really to turn. And then same on the Aircat, the indicator is not it's marked with forward and reverse, but doesn't have like a gap like this one has right in here that you can see exactly which way it's going to go. Although this doesn't say forward or reverse, so kind of down to guessing on what you've used last. Overall size and weight seems a little heftier, but not too bad. Balance is pretty good in hand, I would say. Little front heavy, holding it kind of in the middle here. It does seem to naturally want to go towards the head, but that is with this compact 2 amp hour battery. A heavier battery might balance that out a bit better, although would ruin the dimensions of the tool. And then just for size comparison here with a couple of the air ratchets, the overall length up to where the battery compartment is pretty similar, but you do have that extra 4 or 5 inches off the backside for the battery as well. So overall bigger, and even in the depth dimensions, similar enough, but a little bit thicker, not by much, 1/4 of an inch or so. So it is a little bit more bulky than an air ratchet. These are all 3/8 air ratchets, by the way, but overall dimensions aren't too bad. And remember, you'd have an air hose out the back here anyway, so this sort of bulk there versus an air hose, there's an argument there to say which one's more annoying, the battery or the air hose itself. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of testing. I'm going to check RPM. So this one's rated at 250 RPM. The Aircat's rated at 280, and we're not actually sure what the Husky is rated at here. It does give us a 45 foot-pounds. These two are both 70 foot-pounds, so we'll be able to check that out. But let's start with RPM and see where they end up. Okay, so one thing I've just noticed doing the RPM test here is it's actually getting a bit warm. So I've got the thermal camera out here, and as you can see, and I'll take a snapshot of this as well, but it's reading almost 50 degrees in the head here already. And that's only with, maybe 30 seconds of runtime. So I'm kind of actually surprised, see if I can get a better picture of that for you guys here. I'm actually kind of surprised how warm that is getting. That's definitely something air ratchets don't have a problem with, is heat, because they are cooled by the air flowing in, but you can tell these things are actually getting fairly warm. Okay, starting off with the DeWalt here. So about 230, 235 RPM. Against an advertised 250 RPM. Okay, next we'll do the Aircat. I've got the regulator set to 90 PSI while running, as you can see here. Looks to be about 173, 172, 173 RPM. All right, and finally we'll do the Husky air ratchet. We don't have a spec for this one, but we'll see what we get out of it. Looks to be about 164 RPM. Okay, so out of the three, it looks like the DeWalt actually has the highest RPM. and the Aircat second, and then the old Husky third. You could potentially use a little bit more air pressure to get some more RPM, more power out of the air-powered ones, but it's nice the consistency of this. This should deliver that RPM all of the time. The downside is the heat that we discovered here. So it took me a little while just to get, these things are a little fussy to get a reading. And during that runtime, the DeWalt actually got fairly hot. So something else just to be aware of. All right, next we're gonna measure noise. I have a sound pressure meter here, 12 inches away from the head of the ratchet. I'm gonna do them sideways so that the air hose doesn't get in the way. And let's start with the DeWalt here. Gonna have to go up a range. Looks to be about 99 decibels. Next up we have the Aircat. And 98, 99, maybe a little bit quieter, but not by much than the DeWalt Ratchet. And finally the Husky. I know this one's gonna be loud, so I'm gonna go up one more range as well, but here we go. Looks to be about 115 or 116 decibels, so extremely loud. You wouldn't want to use this one without hearing protection, and I definitely had my earmuffs on for that. So it's safe to say that the DeWalt is fairly competitive with the air ratchets. I thought it might have been a lot quieter, just given that it doesn't have the airflow and isn't using that same mechanism. It should be just an electric motor, but it is still fairly loud, at least comparable with what is known as a quiet air ratchet. Compared to if you have one of these older ones, then this would be a huge step up. Just a fair bit quieter from the older kind of ratchets than the newer kind of quiet style ratchets. Okay, so next let's just see how it runs here. I've got a 1/2 inch bolt and a 3/4 socket in the ratchet, and let's just make sure it's facing the right direction and run it off a bit here. Seems all right, and then let's run it down here as well. Pretty good jolt when it stops, but not unmanageable. It seems like it has some sort of soft prevention circuit in there. So not like an air ratchet where it's just, if you hit it, it 100% goes. This one looks like it kind of softens the blow once you get close to the end if it's already tight. So we'll just run that back again and then forward again and maybe have a better look at it. Decent jolt on that first initial stop, but then once it's there, yeah, not too bad. All right, and to see how much torque they're actually generating, I'm gonna take a torque wrench. This one's set to 40 foot-pounds right now. I'm gonna tighten these down and then we'll see with the ratchet if it's able to remove them. So starting at 40, there's 40 foot-pounds. Bring in the ratchet here. Let's see if it can remove that. Yep, no problem removing that. So we'll go up to 50 and try again. Okay, here we are at 50. Again, the ratchet at 50 foot-pounds. Yep, no problem again. Moving up to 60. That's 60 foot-pounds. Okay, might be at the limits here. And it looks like that soft start is actually taking effect now. So normally with an air ratchet, you can bump it a few times and get an extra hit, but this one doesn't look like it lets you do that. Give it a couple bumps there and see what happens. Yeah, there we go. It actually was able to do 60. So it seems as though if the soft start or stop or whatever you want to call it triggers, then it won't keep going, loosening a bolt, take it off and give it another bump, it might go. So we'll go up to 65 next, but I think we're getting close to the limits. Given it's rated 70 though, that's pretty much what I would have expected. So tightening to 65. And here we go at 65 foot-pounds. Yeah, the soft thing going again, give it a little bump. So it doesn't look like we can budget at 65, but 60 foot-pounds, given it's rated for 70, not too bad. Let's actually try with a 5 amp hour battery just for fun at 65. So got a 5 amp hour battery on it now. I haven't touched it or retorqued it, so all those bumps earlier will still apply, but let's see what it does at 65 here. Okay, so we're actually able to move it at 65. That little extra current with the 5 amp hour battery seems to have helped. So let's go up to 70 and just see if it can actually make spec. Okay, torquing to 70. Okay, so same test, but now at 70 foot-pounds with the 5 amp hour battery. Oh, there she goes. So it took a few bumps, but the 5 amp hour battery gets us there to 70 foot-pounds. So I guess that's not too bad. So with the 5 amp hour or potentially the power stack battery, it will actually loosen a bolt that's torqued to 70 foot-pounds. Okay, and just for comparison, I've got the Aircat, and we're going to try it at 60 foot-pounds to start. So no problem at 60. We'll go up to 70 as well. Okay, and here we go at 70 foot-pounds. Again, no problem at 70. Okay, and here we are at 80 foot-pounds on the Aircat, so over spec at this point. So it looks like that's about the limit for the Aircat. So it's able to do 70 as well. It was a little easier at 70 than the DeWalt, but both are pretty well within spec. Okay, and the last thing I want to try just before we wrap up here is using just this as a normal ratcheting wrench. So as you know, you can ratchet these like a normal ratchet would as well. And that's usually what you do if something's really stiff. Rather than trying to use the motor to do it, you just ratchet it off a little and then use this to spin it off completely. So let's have a look at that here. So we're tight now, and feels pretty decent. The plastic housing, I would be a little bit worried about bending too much. I'm just trying to tighten right now. So you can see there is some flex in that. And I'd be nervous to really push this any much further than, say, 40 or 50 foot-pounds. So with a normal ratchet, these are a bit more solid. I think there's a little bit more metal in the body of these, so it doesn't feel as bad giving it a hard pull. But even then, we can loosen these off, and works as expected. The back drag is definitely a lot more than a normal ratchet, but that's to be expected as well. Okay, so final thoughts on the DeWalt DCF513. It's a pretty nice ratchet, makes decent power even compared to the air ratchets. It's a little heavier and bulkier, but that's to be expected with a cordless rather than air tool where the motor has to be inside, including the power source and everything. It is pretty convenient just to grab, so nicer than having to drag an air hose around with you. Overall, I do see myself using this quite a bit. It seems like a nice alternative to air tools and works pretty well. So that's my first look at the DeWalt DCF513 cordless ratchet. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If you aren't already subscribed, please consider it. And as always, thanks for watching.